All right, guys, today we're talking about the top 9 best comp carry guns on the market. We're going to start with the pros and cons, and this is going to be purely my opinion, but let's get after it. All right, guys, starting at number 9, we're talking about the CZ P10C. This gun feels amazing in my hands. It's got one of the best ergonomics out of all the guns on the table. The stippling phenomenal, the trigger's really good. The only thing that really is a downfall to this pistol is there's no optic cut. The spring rate for the recoil assembly is really heavy. There's not a whole lot of aftermarket support. I would like to see more companies making more things for this, but it's just not gonna happen. At number 8, we have the Springfield Hellcat Pro. I chose the Hellcat Pro over the Hellcat because it's a larger gun. It's better for a comped setup. Talking about the pros, it's got front slide serrations from factory, optic cut from factory, pretty good trigger and a really good mag release, probably one of the better ones on the table. Cons, hard to find holsters, not a lot of aftermarket support, and I really don't like Springfield's political interference with what they got going on at Senate. At number 7, we have the PSA Dagger. This is a great option for the cost. It's relatively cheap, probably the cheapest gun on the table, and it comes with a lot of pros. It comes with an optics cut, front slide serrations. It's based off a Gen 3 Glock, so you can get aftermarket support with barrels, striker assemblies, all the internals, triggers. Some of the cons, the grip texture feels weird. It's very smooth. It's not super ergonomic. The trigger's really bad, but like I said, you can change that out. And probably the worst thing about this gun is the mag release. You have to push it in very far to get it to drop. And that's pretty much it on the cons. This is a great gun for the price, but there is a lengthy list of cons. At number 6, we have the Walther PDP. Great gun with a lot of pros. The optic system from Walther is really good. You tell them what optic you have, they'll send you the appropriate plate. Plates are nice and thick. Front slide serrations are the best amongst all the other guns here. They're very aggressive when you have wet hands. Same with the grip texture, probably the best amongst all the guns here. It's very ergonomic, very easy to handle with recoil. Now getting into the cons. The trigger isn't great for a Walther. The reset is where it kills it. It's got a really soft, not super audible reset. The bore axis is really high on this gun. It kind of drops it down the list because it's, I think, the highest bore axis amongst all the guns here. And with the trigger and the bore axis and the size of this pistol, it drops it down the list. Up next, we have the Smith & Wesson M&P 9 2.0 Compact. This is a really good gun. It's actually, I think, the most popular gun in the United States. It sells the most, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's priced right, comes with the 2.0, comes with an optic system, front slide serrations, a much improved trigger over the 1.0, the double-edged sword of the grip texture. Some people love it, some people hate it. I'm gonna put it in the hate category, kicking off the cons. It's a little too aggressive for concealed carry. It wants to rub your stomach raw. It's very uncomfortable. The trigger is better than the 1.0. It's still, the reset is not great. I don't like how much the safety sticks off the face of the trigger. There's not a lot of aftermarket support with this being one of the best-selling guns in the US. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's where we're at. At number 4, we have the Glock 43X. This is probably going to be the best sized pistol on the table. It has a very short slide, which makes it good for comps. It has the perfect grip to fit all your fingers on, and it comes optics ready with the MOS system. It's got front slide serrations, and the trigger is very tactile. But that's kind of where the pros end. Going for cons, talking about the trigger, there's a safety on the trigger, and it protrudes quite a bit past the face of the trigger, which is very uncomfortable when shooting a lot of rounds at the range. The grip texture is almost non-existent. It's really smooth, so it kind of moves a little bit under recoil, unless you have an amazing grip. And the biggest con of all with the Glock 43X is the capacity. You only get 10 rounds. There's aftermarket accessories that increase it to 15, but from factory, you only get 10. Now we're getting into the top 3 when things are getting serious. Coming in at number 3, we have the P365 X Macro build. This is a combination between a 365 slide and an X Macro frame. This is kind of a Frankenstein build, and that's probably the only reason it's at number 3. I really don't prefer the 365 or the 365 XL standalone. This build with the FCU is why it's in number 3. Starting with the pros, optics cut, front slide serrations. The trigger is pretty good in this. It's not the best. It's kind of mushy, but it's better than some of the other ones on the table. And with this build, you have the X Macro 17 round capacity on the frame. It's not as long as your standard like Glock 17 frame. It feels smaller, which makes it easier to conceal. Going into the cons, this is a Frankenstein build, so it gets kind of expensive. You have a lot of waste. It's still relatively snappy and small for its size. If it had a little bit of a heavier slide, it would probably be in the number 2 spot, but that's why we're stuck at number 3. Coming in at number 2, we have the Glock 45. Reason I chose the 45 over the 17 or the 19 is it's the best of both worlds. You get the larger frame with the shorter slide, which is ideal for a comp. Jumping right into the pros, we have the front slide serrations, the trigger, which is much better improved over the 43X. It just feels crisper. The grip texture is actually nicer on this than the 43X. That's why it's higher up on the list. And most of all, there's insane amount of aftermarket support for the 45 or any of the Glocks for that matter. And that's why it's up higher up in the list. For the cons, the MOS system's pretty bad. We ended up going with a CH Precision optics plate just because the MOS plates are really thin. There's not a lot of thread engagement, and we've actually seen them snap off. Another con for this is with the full-length grip, as it's nice, you do get more printing. It's one of the full-length grips that actually feels longer than it should for 17 rounds. Overall, this is a really good gun. It's a really good host for a comp. It's the perfect size, and there's a lot of aftermarket support, so you really can't go wrong with this gun. And finally, we got my favorite pistol of all, the SIG P320. This gun has a long list of pros and only 2 cons, and that's why it's number 1. One of the biggest pros about this system is the FCU and the versatility that brings. Comes optics cut for a Delta Point Pro. We ended up throwing one on. It's not my favorite optic, but it is really nice that it comes optics cut. The slide serrations are very nice on the SIG. The grip texture is also very nice. It's there enough that when you're shooting, it's not wanting to slide out of your hands, but it's not too aggressive. The trigger is pretty good on this. There's a little bit of mush on the take-up. The aftermarket support is where this really shines. This wouldn't be possible without companies like Herrington Arms, Align Tactical, all the other different aftermarket accessories that come with it, with mag extensions and mag wells and triggers. This is why a lot of people get into the firearms industry is the love of putting things together, and that's exactly what this gun embodies. It's everything you want it to be and nothing more. And that's why there's only 2 cons. The only 2 cons are this gun has a history of NDs, negligent discharges, or just going off by itself. It failed drop tests in the beginning, and cost. There's a lot of waste if you build this for your first time. You're not gonna know what parts you want. You'll buy a SIG. You'll throw half of it away and then spend money on getting exactly what you want, but it'll be worth it. This is the gun. This is my go-to. If I could only pick one, this would be it, and that's why it sits at number 1. We went over a lot of guns today. There's a reason this is number 1. If you guys want inspiration to build a 320 like this, check out our video, link in the description. We'll see you guys next time.